Hi, in this one we're going to be taking the loop that we understood manually in the last one and writing it out in PyCharm. So just fire up your PyCharm and create a new project. Let's get into it and learn how to actually write and execute a while loop. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to go to File, click on New Project, and as usual, just create a new project in my Python course folder. So this one I'm just going to call while loops intro. So I'm going to create this in a new window, and here we have it. As always, I'm going to remove all of our default code that PyCharm provides us and move on. So the question was to print out the first 5 numbers from 0. In this case, the first thing we did was write our loop control variable. In this case, that would be I equals 0. Now, why is I 0? Just because we're going to print the value of I and it needs to start from 0, and the value of I is what is actually going to govern or decide for how many times this loop actually runs. Next, we write while with a space and then I is less than 5. So this is our looping condition. This is a looping condition because just as we discussed in the last one, I needs to be less than 5, or the loop needs to run until the value of I is less than 5, because if the value of I is 5, then the loop has actually run 6 times rather than 5 times, and you want to run the loop until the value of I is 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is a total of 5 times. So while I is less than 5, I'll press enter and I get this indentation. Let's say you don't get it. You just press a tab key or 1, 2, 3, and 4 spaces, and well, you have your indentation in place. Now, while I is less than 5, you simply want to print the value of I, and then you want your update statement. In your update statement, what are you going to write? You simply want to think about what you want to do with your update statement. In this case, you want to increment or increase the value of I by a factor of 1 for every repetition or every iteration of the loop. In this case, that would be I equals I plus 1. So every time your loop hits this line, it's going to increase the value of I by 1 and then move on to the second step, which is our looping condition, and then go on. So that's pretty much it. Let's run this and see if it works. When I run this, it gives us the exact output that we saw in the last one. Now you must be wondering, how would we write a loop where you wanted to print the first 10 numbers? The first 10 numbers would be 0 to 10, right? So in this case, I would simply write I is less than 10. Sorry, the first 10 numbers would be 0 to 9. So I'd simply write I is less than 10 and then click on run, and that would give me the numbers from 0 through 9. Now, how about we write a program where we have a loop that prints out numbers from 1 to 10. Yeah. So for that, there's 2 ways to go about it. The first way is you start from I equals 0 and then you write while I is less than 10. Okay. And then you print I plus 1, because when I is 0, you go 0 plus 1 is 1, right? So you print I plus 1, and then you actually write I equals I plus 1. And now when I run this, it says 1 through 10, right? Another way to type this out or write this code would be, I'm just going to comment this so that we have this code. Yep, this would be I equals 1. So you start from 1 because, well, you want to write from 1 to 10, right? So you start from 1 and then you write while I is less than 11, print I, and then I equals I plus 1. So what's happening here is your program goes from I equals 1, then 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, and then that I becomes 10, right? So you print out 1 here, then you print out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then you print out 10, and then I becomes 11, and once it becomes 11, 11 is less than 11 becomes false. So once your looping condition is false, well, your loop breaks or your loop stops, and there you have it. You have 1 through 10, the same output again. So that was pretty simple, right? Let's take another one. In this case, we want to write a loop that prints out the first 20, or not the first 20, but let's say all the even numbers between 0 and 20. So what is the condition for for a number to be even, right? The condition for a number to be even is if the number is divisible by 2 or perfectly divisible by 2. So how do we check divisibility in Python? We use the modulus sign or the modulo sign. So just for representation's sake, let's try 15 modulo 2. And when I click on run, it gives me 1. So if 15 modulo 2 is not equal to 0, that means that it is an odd number. But if 15 modulo 2 equals 0, then it is an even number. So when I click on run, this says false because this is not equal to 0, and this number 15 is not perfectly divisible by 2, so it does leave a remainder. In this case, a number that doesn't leave a remainder with this condition is an even number. So to print out the first 20 even numbers, we'd have a loop that looks somewhat like this. So we start from I equals 0, so we loop from 0 to 20. Then we write while the value of I is less than 21. Why? Because we want to include the number 20 in our calculations. So while I is less than 21, we put a colon, press enter, make sure you have this indentation right here, and then we write if I mod 2 equals 0, then you print I, or else you don't do anything, right? But at the same time, now that you're done with the body of the loop, you want to go ahead and write your update statement. That's I equals I plus 1. And then when you click on run, it gives you all the even numbers between 0 to 20. Yeah, it's pretty simple. Another way to write the same loop would be this. I could simply write again I equals 0 because we start from 0, then while I is less than 21, the same thing, and then I would print I and then write I equals I plus 2. So what's happening here is we're incrementing I by 2 at every iteration, which is basically going to give us an even number always, right? So here you don't really need that check. The if-else statement, you can simply increment your I by 2, run it, and well, you get the same answer or the same output, right? So what I want you guys to know here is there's many different ways to get the same output using different kinds of code, right? So there's never just one solution to a problem. There's like 10 or 15 different solutions to most problems. So always try and think more creatively when you're writing your programs and when you're writing your loops. Now, in the next one, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking some questions and solving them using the while loop for some practice, and obviously we're also going to have some exercise that are included in the course resources that are attached to this section. Until then, just have fun, and I'll see you in the next one.